All right, time for another Nerdy Virgin podcast. My name is Joshua Snyder. I'm recording this while on a walk. I shaved my head last week. I talked about it in a previous podcast. Go back and listen to it. Like, subscribe, share. Long story short, I shaved my head, and now I'm cold. And I just passed Kenneth Street, which seems like a kind of a nondescript name for a street, right? Kenneth. Who was Kenneth? I wish they provided little information cards on some of these street names. I'd like to know who Kenneth was. He did something worthy of having a street named after him. Of course, the other possibility is whoever was naming streets just liked the name Kenneth. I don't know. I like Kenneth. Rolls off the tongue. Call it Kenneth Street. But I want to know the story. Why did you name it Kenneth Street? Well, I'll tell you the story. I'll tell you why. 50 years ago, there was a fight between two gangs in Burbank. One gang was known as the Kenneths, and the other gang was known as the Phillips. They were very nasty gangs. Nasty in Burbank terms. A lot of letters were exchanged. Nasty letters. No one ever died. No one was ever punched. No one was ever hurt. They never actually fought. But you didn't want to get a letter from a Kenneth. It could be pretty scathing in a passive-aggressive, mildly polite sort of way. I actually have here with me a letter that was written by a Kenneth sent to a Philip. Dear Philip member 26548. They gave each other member numbers in case they were ever captured. They didn't refer to each other by name because if they were captured, if one Philip was captured, he wouldn't know the other names of the other Philips. Like in case he was tortured and he was given truth serum, he would only know numbers. So it helped protect the other Philips. Nothing remotely ever happened, but the leader of the Philips was beyond paranoid. So if you were a Philip, you were given a number. So the letter goes, Dear Philip, number 42648. I don't know if that was the right number. I'm making all of this is just none of this is real. You know this, right? I know I'm totally breaking the illusion that this is real. But I just am calling out the fact that I forgot the number. Like if I was truly a brilliant improv artist, I would have remembered the number. Back to the narrative. Dear Philip number 143825-2X B. It has come to my attention. Rather, it has come to our attention. And that wasn't me breaking it. That was actually in the letter. It was come to my attention. And then they did a ... and then they said, it has come to our attention that you were caught walking on the edge of Mr. Patterson's grass. February the 4th at 2:02 p.m. in the afternoon. You know this, we know this. That is Kenneth territory. You do not touch the grass in Kenneth territory. Because of your attempt to challenge our borders, the following action will be taken. You will not be allowed at the Burbank Bingo Night for a time of 3 consecutive weeks. If we see you at the Burbank Bingo Night, your library privileges at the Burbank Public Library will be revoked. Action item number 2. parentheses. I know I forgot to write action item number 1, but we're short on paper. End parentheses. It will be forbidden for you to drive on the newly named Kenneth Street for the allotted time of 6 months. If you apologize officially with a letterhead, we will allow you to drive on the newly named Kenneth Road. But you will still be forbidden from playing bingo for no less than 3 weeks. We sincerely hope that the magnitude of this punishment will force you to look into your soul and re-examine the kind of person who would walk on grass like that. Signed with sincerity and severity, the Kenneths. So that's why they named the road Kenneth. There you go. That was long. I'm trying to be more instinctual. I'm trying to have a bit more fun in life. I'm trying to think less and just go off of instinct. I should probably start by stopping not using the word trying. I'm going on instinct. Just say it. I'm operating on instinct. I'm just going by instinct. It was instinct that led me to Kenneth Road. And hopefully it will be instinct that leads me out of it. Passing by a Honda on my walk. Always a good sign seeing a Honda. There's a special place in my heart for Hondas. I come from a Honda family. Well, we didn't start out a Honda family. My dad was given, I think when I was born, the first few years of my life, he drove a Ford Fairmont. Which is not a car that anyone would associate with joy. At least that was my recollection. It tended to not start, which is a problem when you're a car. You need a car to start. I don't see too many Ford Fairmonts at car shows. And now, you know what I'm feeling right now? I'll be honest with you. I'm feeling guilt over making fun of the Ford Fairmont. That there might be someone listening to this who designed the Fairmont and said, listen, I put everything into that Fairmont. Everything. Blood, sweat, and tears. But we didn't have the funds. After that, my dad, I think, inherited a Cadillac. And then after the Cadillac, that's when we got the Honda. It was a big old gas-guzzling Cadillac. The Honda was better. And the Honda is driven to this day in my house. A 1990 Honda that is now, let's see, what is it? 1990, 2000, wait a minute. 1990 to 2000 is 10 years. Why am I suddenly having trouble counting? 2000 to 2010 is 20 years. 2010 to 2020 is 30 years. It is 32 years old. It is a 32-year-old Honda. Now here's my question, because like a Cadillac in the 1950s, by the time you get to the 1980s, that 50s Cadillac, I believe, is considered a classic. So technically, is this Honda now considered a classic? I don't feel like I see 1990 Hondas at car shows. What, as they say, is the deal with that? It should be a classic. it probably works better than the classics. I think they still have the on. They may have gotten rid of it. I don't know. At the point with my parents where sometimes they don't fill me in on these details. And then I walk home and there's a violin in the middle of the living room. And I say, what happened here? This is true. I walked into one of the last times I was visiting home, I walked in and there in the living room, in the middle of the room was a violin. Might have been a viola. Either way, you know the instrument or the similar instrument that I'm referring to. There's a violin just in the middle of the living room on a stand as if it had just been played 10 minutes before I arrived. Now, I'd like to think I know my parents pretty well. And to my recollection, nobody in that house ever played the violin. Ever. My mom played the piano, but nobody played the violin. So my first question to the general room, to the house, to the people who were there, was, is somebody playing the violin now? And the response was no. And the way that no was said to me was casual. And there was no explanation ever given to me as to why the violin was there. There was sort of we got it from someone, and I think I believe it is there for decorative reasons. They have a decorative violin that is there for ambiance. And I'm fairly sure that it is there for ambiance because as soon as I made a move to pick it up, I was immediately told, don't play it. The thing is, here's the thing. I think this should be a general rule that should be observed by the human race. If you're gonna put a violin in a room and nobody in the house plays the violin, there had better be a story behind that violin. There had better be, it should be like the movie The Red Violin. It should be that kind of thing, that this is a violin that has passed from person to person over generations. It's been through wars. Napoleon played the violin. It should have, like the red in the red violin, should be made of the blood of an ancient magician. And it is a violin that will be around long after the human race is gone. If it's anything other than that, I think I just question it, that's all. Now I find this hilarious, and listen, let me go on the other side of the argument. Let me play devil's advocate. Why can't they put up a violin, Josh? Why can't they decoratively put up a violin? Why do you have to make fun of them for choosing to put up a violin? Because and here's the argument against myself. No, it's not an obvious thing that you would put up in the middle of the room, on the floor, by the way. The stand was on the floor. It wasn't on a shelf. It was on the floor, next to the couch. So prominently in the middle of the room. I think it would also be okay if it was a Batman situation where you pull the violin and a trapdoor opens. That's what it felt like. Like, if you're playing a video game, it was positioned in the place where, that's where the secret door opens. In Resident Evil, that's what opens the secret door. Or in Resident Evil, you got to find the violin and you got to stick it in the case right there on the floor, and that's what opens the door. That makes sense. But if I were to play devil's advocate on this violin here, why make fun of it? I mean, I can understand the other side. It is an instrument of creation. When given to the right person, oh, maybe that was the other thing. It could be a Star Wars situation. Maybe the violin belonged to a great violinist who turned to the dark side, and now the violin will be passed down to their child, who will hopefully use it to make non-dark side music. You know, they never touched on that in the Star Wars universe, by the way. The light side of the Force, the dark side of the Force, the Jedi, the Sith. They probably listened to different music, right? I mean, I guess the Emperor was watching that floating opera thing. What do the Jedi listen to? Probably a lot of, you know, atonal stuff, kind of chants. But anyway, the argument for the violin in the living room. Here we go. It is a creative instrument, and putting it in the living room, just having it be there, perhaps inspires a sense of creativity and nostalgia just by looking at it. And one could also argue that the violin in and of itself, as an object, is nice to look at. It evokes emotion. Positive emotion, hopefully. Negative emotion if you are or know someone who played it badly and that's all you hear. It could be a trigger. It could cause a seizure in certain people if they've had experience with bad violin playing. But hopefully they wouldn't be visiting. You need to put up a warning sign. Warning, there's a violin. If you are triggered by the violin, the side of a violin, please do not enter. Or you'll have to sign this disclaimer. But yeah, why am I making fun of my parents for this? Well, let's be clear. I'm making fun of my mom. My dad would never put a violin in the middle of a living room. He would never do that. He just would simply never do that. If there was a violin in the middle of the living room and my dad was in charge of everything, it would mean that it was that much of a mess, that it was part of a larger catastrophe in the living room, but there haphazardly. It was placed there on purpose, decoratively, by my mother, who was a very creative soul. And I must say that it did lighten the room. It was a nice vibe. It felt very positive. It was a positive vibe that was created by the violin. I would certainly rather have the violin in there than, a shotgun. That's okay. That's a different vibe. There's danger there. The only danger with the violin is you mangle Mozart. And you know what? Fairly unique. A fairly unique way to decorate. So, I need to back off. I need to be more supportive to my mother, and I need to back off and appreciate her decorative skills for what they are. I guess the crux of this, it was the surprise. Maybe what would have been helpful, is I needed a heads up. Hey, just want to let you know, it's been a few years since you've been to the house. There's a violin in the middle of the room for purely decorative reasons. Just prepare yourself. And then I would have taken a breath. I would have seen it. I would have gone, yes, that's correct. I'm prepared. And I would have been all right. I was all right anyway. This is a very minor thing. But it was tickling. It tickled me. It tickled me. All right, well, I'm getting to the end of my walk. That felt good. That was a nice rendition of something, wasn't it? It was a very nice rendition. I like where we went with this. We covered a lot of ground. Hopefully my parents don't hate me after this. If they are listening, if they are listening, I love you very much. I hope the violin is doing well. Say hi to the Honda for me. Have a good night.